everybody. Welcome to Langer at the Mic. I'm, of course, Mike Langer, but we are joined by a very special guest today. He was doing exactly what I'm doing now, but 20 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, since he has worked for the NHL Network, and he is now a SportsCenter anchor and the host of Habs on TSN. He also read my first ever highlight pack that I wrote for SportsCenter. He is Mr. Glenn Schiiler. How are you doing today, Glenn?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Mike. Thanks for having me. What pack would that have been? Was that an NFL pack, perhaps, or hockey?
No, so it was the Father's Day Chicago Cubs versus Atlanta Braves pack.
Oh, baseball. I was way off.
I don't know if you remember. It was It was the Montero brothers, right?
The
both the
brothers
catchers.
pack.
Yeah,
that was a pretty cool. Actually, I do remember because you don't see that every day, of course. So,
exactly. It's Father's Day,
nice.
so it sticks out, right? But
sure.
how's the newsroom going? I miss it nowadays.
Yeah, it's getting back to I want to say pre-COVID levels, and not quite. I don't think it's ever going to get back to that in terms of everyone being in that one room, because as you know, now they've kind of created other workspaces. There's people working on the third floor, people working down the hall a little bit. But I have noticed in the last few months, especially near the end of football season, like the Saturdays, the Sundays for college football, and Sundays for NFL, of course. It was a packed house, especially on that changeover time when it's like you got the day shifts blending into some of the night shifts coming in. So yeah, like there's always lots of energy in there tonight. You got the Leafs happening as we tape this on a Sunday night, so a little bit buzz in the newsroom always when they're playing, because we got a lot of Leaf fans at the TSN SportsCenter on the row there, but not all Leaf fans. I know people think the TSN can be biased towards Toronto a lot, but you can speak to that, Mike. There are a lot of Habs fans there. There's just a lot of like people from Alberta, Vancouver, so you got a mix of both, kind of everything, right?
Yeah, we will talk about the Leafs, of course, because you're in Toronto, you're in Scarborough. So, but first, we are a Habs channel here at Langer at the Mic. And yeah, just it was so funny. I was actually out last night. I see you obviously with Laura Dyken while I'm at the bar with my friends on SportsCenter. Yeah. But I also always find myself looking in the background to see if I see any familiar faces. And I mostly have to go by backs of heads. But anyway, talking about the Montreal Canadiens now. First of all, how has this season gone in your opinion? Like, has it gone the way you'd expect it to for the Montreal Canadiens?
I think they are where they are in the standing, sort of where I expected them to be, but not in the way that they've kind of gotten there, if that makes any sense. Like, I didn't see all of the injuries happen. I don't think anybody could have predicted that. Every team deals with injuries, maybe a couple key players here and there. But as you know, Montreal, at one point here, even to this point, they have probably 9-10 regulars out of the lineup. And what I've kind of been interested in this season is that we've got to learn, a little bit of some of the players in the prospect system or in the pool system. Because, Raphael Harvey-Pinard, was he a player that prior to the season was circled as, maybe one of the next guys to come up and get a chance and make a difference, and score some goals and produce at the NHL level? I'm not sure a lot of people were looking at him compared to, other guys, on Laval at that point. But that's been good that he's kind of gotten called up, gotten an opportunity. So, for players like him and Ylunin and just like throughout the lineup, you go, because there's been so many injuries, we've gotten to see so many guys get opportunities. So, yeah, again, I think I didn't expect them to be a playoff team this year. I expect them to be closer to the bottom of the Atlantic than the top. But it's been good that we've got to see, especially just, guys that you don't know how they're going to react when you put them in these situations. But man, these games recently, when they're beating Tampa, they're in a lot of these close games against good teams. Recently beat the Penguins as well, a desperate Penguins team. And again, these lineups are not exactly what we envisioned for the Habs to have back at the beginning of the season. So, you know what? I mean, there's been positives to take away from a frustrating season where they've had to deal with so many injuries that we've kind of got to learn a little bit what's in the system and what they have going forward here. But there's still going to be some tough decisions to make when a lot of these guys return next year, and how many spots that they're actually going to be for some of these players this year who have proven what they're worth.
Well, speaking of frustration, the frustration among the fan base is a sense of cognitive dissonance over wanting the team to win, but also wanting the team to lose so that they can maximize their draft position. And with them playing as well as they've been playing lately, that hasn't been really accomplished or been able to be accomplished these last couple of games. So with that being said, do you believe that tanking exists in hockey especially when there's a Connor Bedard or Connor McDavid type of player that's in the upcoming draft class. And if you do believe in tanking, do you agree with it?
I mean, I do think there are some teams who, yeah, they just admit at a certain point, probably around the trade deadline, maybe a couple months before, in Columbus's or Arizona's position, that look, there's probably discussions happening in the boardrooms upstairs. I don't think it ever gets talked about in the players, among the players. I mean, and except for the fact that they're probably defying that if they feel like, oh, the team wants us to tank, like they're probably going to get that screw you mode in them and go out there and try to stick it to the man, if you will, or try to prove them wrong. That we don't want that, because that's just the nature of an athlete that makes it that far in life. You don't get to the NHL by just being a guy who's kind of like, oh, okay, I'll lose today, that's fine. So I think every game that players go out there and play, they want to win. So tanking, I think it exists at a small level on the management side, when if, like you said, if there's a player like Connor Bedard available and your team is not going to the playoffs, why not kind of give yourself every chance to kind of get that player, because they don't come around every year, as we know. So yeah, I do believe, and I'm okay with it, because it doesn't guarantee anything in this system. In the NFL, I guess it kind of does. If you finish dead last, you get that first overall pick. I do believe in the future they will change that rule because of leagues like the NHL, where yeah, you can go ahead and try to lose every game, but that only gives you the 25% chance. So there's a 75% chance you don't get it. So it's quite the risk, going for that. But I could see why teams want to do it.
Yeah, especially in the NFL. Speaking of which, Lovie Smith basically cost the Houston Texans the first overall pick when he went out there and basically had his guys play for the win. And the Texans, they think they finished like what, 2-15-1 or 3-14-1, and the Bears finished, or whatever it was, and the Bears finished just ahead of them, or last place, to get that first overall pick in the NFL. So obviously, yeah, there's that whole aspect of it's not guaranteed, but to your point, like I think there are still, like on the management side, there's still things that can be done to increase your chances of finishing towards the bottom of the standings and maximizing that draft pick.
And still looking like you're trying, like Nashville, for example. They traded more than a few pieces leading up to the deadline and at the deadline, but then they went on a run where they won like 7 of 10 games or 7 of 9 games, and they're kind of right in that Western wild card mix. But hey, so they're kind of winning on both ends there. It looks like they were, no, we're giving up on the season and maybe trying to get a better draft pick, but then at the same time they're pulling up players and calling them up from the American Hockey League. Guys like Kiefer Sherwood getting more of a look now and producing, and Philip Tomasino, former Team Canada player in the World Juniors. Like, so these are high end prospects in Nashville that maybe at the beginning of the year weren't going to get as big of an opportunity until the last maybe week or two of the season, but they're getting a month or two now of a look because of the trade deadline decisions. And yeah, so you're right. Like management can make trades and clean house at the deadline. Columbus, another example. Arizona, just giving away assets and taking on dead cap space, and it's very obvious what they're doing. But again, I think I'm okay with it. Hey, if it's in the rules, you play by the rules, right? I mean, if there's a loophole, people are going to find it. Smart managers are going to find it, and they're going to use it to their best of their ability.
Do you think Josh Anderson or Joel Edmundson should have been traded at the deadline?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, how much if Josh Anderson was going to get you a first round pick, maybe, yeah, and I think he probably could have fetched that, but I mean, it didn't transpire to that. Don't forget, the Habs have Florida's first round pick already, plus their own. I mean, it's hard to say how many first round picks do you need, because I mean, it'd be great to have 3, but at the same time, like I was mentioning earlier, how many roster spots are actually going to be available on this team going forward next year? I mean, if you start going through the numbers and start going through, some of the players that they've already gotten under contract and who they've given opportunities to, I mean, yeah, like the players that are already signed, we just saw them sign Sean Farrell to a 3-year entry level deal, so he's going to be in the mix for competing for spots. There's so many players like that. Joshua Waugh, who's maybe projected to crack the lineup next year. So sure, stock the cupboard as much as you want, but you're still going to need quality veteran players, Mike. When it comes down to it, you can't just have 12 or even like 9 prospects playing with 3 veterans. It's just, you don't ever see an NHL team go with that. It is a man's league at the end of the day. You can have as many 21-year-old AAA, high-end prospects as you want, but that team has never really won in the NHL. It's never been tried. Obviously, it takes a lot of these kids years and years to develop and be ready to play at that level. So you need guys like Josh Anderson and to a point, Joel Edmundson or a David Savard, if you will. Like you need those guys in your lineup, I think, to help lead the way on the ice and off the ice. It is a big deal for these kids who are just like learning how to be adults because coming out of junior hockey or college or whatever, and then you're into the real world, into professional sports. It's a whole new bubble that they gotta learn how to prosper in as well.
You mentioned Sean Farrell. That was what I want to get to today as well. What do you know about Sean Farrell, or what has Craig Button, let's say, told you about Sean Farrell, and how do you think he will make an impact for the Montreal Canadiens?
To be honest, I haven't actually talked to Craig about Sean Farrell too much. I looked at his numbers today when he got. I've been following a little bit, like through just some Habs content that I sometimes search up for, like players on the rise and stuff like that. So his name obviously pops up, when you read the yearly, like who are the top prospects in the system. His numbers are very impressive at Harvard. They look really good the couple years that he was there. So I'm excited to see how he plays here. It sounds like he's going to get in a game next week. But to be honest, we're gonna see how this kid comes out of some of the top end hockey that he's playing at that level, and you make the jump to the NHL. Deer in the headlights a little bit, but I think going into a room like Montreal right now, where the expectations aren't super high, and you got a room full of like youthful energy right now. They're having fun, even though they're not winning every game. You could just tell Marty St. Louis has this group like in a good headspace. Like, just do the right things on the ice. You can't always control if you're going to win or lose a game, even if you're the best team, but you can always control how you play and how hard you play and the things you're doing and the mentality that you have when you take the ice. And I think since Marty's taken over in the last year and a half, that has been evident of just like this team plays the right way. They might fall short more often than not, but they're developing good habits. And for a player like Sean Farrell to come into the room like that, I think it's nothing but a good thing. And he's going to learn from it, even if it is only a few weeks here, and then get ready, go into the summer, get a solid summer going, and then see if he can crack the team out of camp. But to what I was talking earlier, like on our last Habs broadcast, I think when the Habs played the Bruins last week, Craig Button did a projection of what we know now, who he thinks is going to be in the lineup on opening day next year, and he had Joshua Waugh. I think he had Owen Beck in the lineup as well. He did not have Sean Farrell, I don't believe. I'd have to double check that. But there's just going to be so much competition for these spots. But hey, it's a good problem to have, right? When you got all these guys. Plus, what if they do win the lottery and get Connor Bedard or get a player at 2 or 4 or wherever they're going to let, and they think, and he's possibly good enough to crack the lineup, then it's going to be exciting, this team, for the next few years, seeing how these kind of young players, and like you said, a Brendan Gallagher and Josh Anderson and the veteran mix is going to work here going forward for Montreal.
Listen, Glenn, again, just want to say a huge thank you for joining us today. Agree. Lots of excitement around the Montreal Canadiens going forward. Lots of different directions that they can go in. But before you do go, the last question I want to ask you, because again, we talked a lot about the Montreal Canadiens, but I want to talk about yourself a little bit now, and just simply ask you straight up, what's your favorite part about being a SportsCenter anchor?
My favorite part about being a SportsCenter anchor, I just love bringing the highlights to the people. Finding cool stuff every night, or watching cool stuff, and then bringing it out onto the screen. And I've loved sports as you do. I mean, since I was a kid, I love talking about sports with my friends all the time. That's all we really talked about in school and growing up. It was like the number one passion. So for now, me to be able to do this as a job and kind of bring that passion to the TV screen, and that's really the best thing for me. And I truly say, like, there's no bad days when I like, oh, I got to work today. Sometimes you're kind of like tired if you work 5 or 6 in a row or something. But at the end of the day, I can always tell myself and remind myself how grateful I am just to have a job like this. It took me a while to get it. Like you said, I started in Thunder Bay, my hometown, in 2001, and I left there in late 2003. And so we're talking 20 years, now in the business. And I got this job at TSN in 2012, 2013, NHL Network, and then TSN, which is in the same building. But yeah, it's been a crazy how fast it flies by, like 20 plus years. But yeah, I'm truly still having fun doing it. And I think that's the best part of being on SportsCenter. It's just fun to bring sports. And as the seasons change, you know, it's amazing. Where are we going to fill the show with? Some slow nights in the summer, even. It's like we always find enough for an hour. Talk about this. You bring in some tennis or golf or, you know, things that, you know, maybe you don't have time for on other shows. But yeah, there's so many great stories in the sports world, and just bringing them to the fans. It's the best part.
Especially here locally in Thunder Bay. I mean, we've definitely covered a lot of local stories, especially.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is really cool indeed. But one last yes or no question: are the Toronto Maple Leafs going to win a playoff round this year? Yes or no? That's all.
Yes.
All right, you heard it first from Glenn
Yes,
Schiiler.
they will.
There you go. Even though he is predicting that the Leafs are going to win a playoff series this year, still give Glenn Schiiler a big thumbs up. Let us know in the comments what you think about Sean Farrell, his impact, what it could possibly be, and just again, what are different things that the Canadians can be looking forward to this coming off season. But once again, as usual, thumbs up. Give me a follow on Instagram and Twitter at Mike Langer for both. You could follow Glenn Schiiler on Twitter as well. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again next time.